Welcome to Monarchist Minute Royals news and discussion out of the good old, God, good old US of A. Okay, good old US of A. I'm Charles York. Joining me tonight are hopefully more decaffeinated people than I. Friedrich Mongolia, Constantine,
Hello.
Did you say Frederick
Victor.
Mongolia?
Magnolia, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Genghis Frederick. There we go.
Frederick is
Okay,
big.
so I regret several of my life choices at this moment.
We also got Victor Smith and as our Vice Chancellor William Stout.
Yay! Okay. Oh, and Trad, who
as
is
well
very
as our newest moderator on our Discord server, Trad Raider. Don't forget to join the Discord server.
Yeah. Hey, that's my job to plug that. Okay. So now that we have assembled, we have a couple of topics. Ooh, Darth, I promised him an intellectual topic and I gave him an intellectual topic, but at this point, no more people are going to be admitted unless somebody leaves or whatnot. So, with that all being said, and the most botched intro in the history of this show out of the way.
I'm sure there's been a worse one.
What?
I said, I'm sure there's been a worse one, probably.
Okay, I've been here for 70 episodes, and I cannot think of a worse intro.
What?
Okay. What did you say, Darth?
Oh, I just said that there's many worse intros that you've done.
You weren't here when I started the intro.
Yeah, you were not here for that. It was beautiful.
It was the one thing
It was a fumbling of the tongue.
Somehow, the one thing that I say literally every single time is what.
It's always that though. It's always the thing that you always say over and over again. You got it down word for word, and then you always mess up that part. Like,
okay.
Have you ever noticed? No, I'm not saying you do that, Charles. I'm just saying, in general, in life, it always is that. It's always something like that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So, with that out of the way, with that being said, with our cast expanded to the point where I'm comfortable, even though you are all very well-behaved people. Well,
mostly.
Okay. Mostly. And there are a couple more people who would probably like to come up, but unfortunately we're reached our staff pick.
Remember, guys, he promised us last episode, if we don't do anything that requires him to edit, he will throw us a cookie.
I didn't say cookie. I just said that I would. I just said I would say one thing that I appreciated about each of you.
Oh, okay.
Yay.
Which, I mean, look, I mean, I am literally a college student now. Do you think I can afford cookies? Okay.
Much less a mail.
Okay. Oh yeah, the USPS these days. How many
the postage? You think we can afford postage nowadays?
Yeah, how many stamps would a require? Okay, anyways,
I get military discount, haha.
Well, okay, that's it. I'll just send all the cookies to you, and then I'll have you mail them out. Okay, so...
Well, wait a minute, that's just useless then. If you're sending them all to Darth, then that's just wasting money.
No, because... Okay, you know what? Because individual pack... Okay, this is the longest, dumbest intro in the history of this show. Anyone who says otherwise is an enemy of the national counter-revolution and will be arrested.
But counter-revolution isn't even on this show.
No, not counter-revolution.
I'm making a joke, Charles.
The thing that we're leading. I know you're making a joke, but I can't. Anyways. Okay. 4 minutes and however many seconds in, we are getting to our first topic. It will be an intellectual topic because... Honestly, I hate the fact that this has basically become a new show, and if that's the Monarchist Minute format you enjoy, congratulations, keep watching, because it probably will still be that, and whatever. But, okay, so here's our topic. Okay, so you know how you have, like, church and state, and like it used to be that the church ranked over the state and everything was right with the world, and then how, well, not everything obviously, but then you had the nowadays you had the state, and the state's kind of doing all the bossing around, and that's not really right with the world. Who do you think should be in charge? Honestly, this was kind of an easy answer for most of us here, but it's kind of last minute. So, but I'm sure Darth can come up with some nuanced ways of expressing my ridiculously simplified version of the question, and because he's the first one on my list, because alphabet or something.
Or something.
Well, if you really want my stance on this, like, I won't use blanket terms like the state or the church, because it's like, well, okay, here in America, it's like, oh, so we're gonna have like Pastor John over there be in charge because America is so fractured in terms of religion, unlike most other countries. But and when it comes to like the state, like what does it mean by the state? Like, is it the ancien regime of France? Yes, I would support the state ruling in that case. If it was like the American Republican form of government that embraces liberal humanism as its religion, well, then I'd much rather have bishops be in charge. So I think it's just kind of nuanced. And also, I personally don't believe that, like, honestly, there should be a state that favors, let's just say, the third or fourth estate. I believe that the second estate or the warrior caste has the right to rule any civilization, the ones who defend the civilization. And then the first estate guides the civilization spiritually forward. They are the spiritual leaders, but the temporal leaders are the warriors, the ones who protect the civilization.
Trad, because next in order. We're going in order. I forgot to mention that. Hyperactivity does that.
That's fun. Yes. So I do agree with the points Darth made, though I do think that in a general sense that the church and the state should be somewhat intertwined. I think that the religion of a kingdom should be, well, integral, hence why I'm an integralist. And so it's very important to me that the state be prominent, if not directly featured as the state religion.
Well, yeah, I mean that's like back in like ancien regime France, like I mentioned, not to like fuck out of order of other people, but it's like technically France didn't have a state religion, even though it's like clearly it was integral. The Catholic Church and the Crown were integral to one another. One couldn't function without the other, and then we saw what happened during the French Revolution, when the Third Estate tried to secularize and atheize everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, yeah, there didn't need to be a official declaration by the King of France that the Catholic Church is like the state church of France. It's like, no, it just was. It was in the DNA of being France. Period.
Yeah, exactly.
Friedrich?
Well, most certainly I do, in certain aspects, agree with Trad and Darth. I don't completely do. I think that the distinction between the two is important. I don't think that. It's really hard to say, because I do think that as monarchists, it is important that the monarch themselves is above the religious organizations in general. I have to make sure I say that in general, because I know, but of course it just depends on your faith yourself. If you're like Catholic, I know it's a bit different. Why is this as the Pope is a monarch, but that's besides the point. I'm pretty sure y'all understand that already, because most of y'all are Catholic. But I think the importance is major separation of church and state is very much important, due to the fact that it is important to keep the church from the state, because it is usually the state that is, as Darth, you would say, is the atheistic part, I guess is what you would call it. I don't really see the state as the atheistic part, but I think it's important that the state be kept out of the church. It is my belief that we should let the church be holy. And I think that's very much important. And of course, to tie it all back into the question of the ranking of the church or the state. I think, in general, as monarchists, we should agree that it should be the state. It should be the monarch. It should be the monarch themselves. The monarch is the symbol of the nation. Now, of course, that does not mean that you can't have an important clergy class in certain pretexts. But in general, I would say that the monarch, or the state, in quotes, should be the higher ranking one.
Constantine. I'm just gonna
Oh,
call you
yes, it's
Constantine.
my turn. Hi, hello. I think there should be a balance between church and state, per se, because, we can't exactly have one being overpowered by the other in a certain sense. Like, yes,
because then it might become like a de facto theocracy in certain aspects.
or a de facto dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Either or.
What's wrong with theocracy?
I don't see anything wrong with both, honestly. But that's not the point here. The point here is that one cannot function without the other. You cannot have a state religion without a strong leader, and you cannot have a strong leader without a strong religion. Like, what was it? What was the example I used earlier, Charles? It was the Guelphs and the Welfs and the Ghibellines.
Yes.
Yes, because in the Holy Roman Imperial days, when it was a conflict between the Pope and the Emperor over who had more power, basically it was Emperor appoint Pope versus Pope appoint Emperor. Because at that point, if memory serves, Rome, the Papal States, was a part of the Holy Roman Empire at some point. I think it was that point. And therefore, the Pope was, technically speaking, through feudal law, subject, in air quotes, to the Emperor. However, most of, medieval history is hard for me sometimes, but I believe it was medieval Italy that sided with the Pope, and most of Germany that sided with the Emperor.
Medieval Italy did not exist. Italy was only unified in the mid 1800s, I think.
When he says medieval Italy, he's using a geographical term, not a political one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I meant the Italian state and the Italian states and people were siding with the Pope against the Emperor because the Emperor was a German and the Pope was generally an Italian. So it all boils down to keeping both in check using the other, in my opinion. One cannot exist without the other. And yeah, one cannot exist without the other.
Thank you for that opinion there, Constantine. I think that there has to be a sort of acknowledgement here that in a properly ordered society, the church and the state would naturally, in a properly ordered society, the church and state would naturally be in lockstep, and there wouldn't be a debate as to which one is superior, because in a way there would be no debate over the superiority of either because they're in agreement. But yes, this is the 70th episode. Thank you, Humbo. But when the church and the state disagree, because they will disagree naturally in modern times, and even in medieval times, they disagreed somewhat. If you want to learn more about that, Darth has a great video on that called, I believe it's the Ghibelline ideal, I believe you called it.
The Ghibelline ideal. I mean, that was the Ghibelline ideal it comes from the Ghibelline emperors and how they wanted, essentially to reinforce the status quo and make it permanent between the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy, where the Holy Roman Emperor was before the Ghibelline emperors, aka the Hohenstaufen dynasty. It was informal that it was the understanding that the Holy Roman Emperor was a temporal sword of Christendom, while then the spiritual sword, the spiritual leader, was the papacy. And that just kind of generally defined the relationship between crown and church. Of course, there were occasional strifes between the two, but most of the time those were always resolved and by the parties involved.
So, okay, so in a modern dispute between, let's bring this up to, I guess, modern day here, where both church and state, I think we all can agree, at least the Catholic Church. I'm not speaking about any other church at this point, though I think it may be true for some. Where both the state, that is to say America, and the church, that is to say the Catholic Church, are both sort of going in terms of going, I guess you could say, away from being away from the mission, I think is the best way to put it. So in modern society, you have to, I guess, take refuge. If you're a conservative or if you're a reactionary, you have to take refuge where you can in sort of historical, traditional teaching. I think that's the best way I can put that.
To better articulate your thoughts, you're talking about what is called the Benedict option, which
Yes.
which is generally the Saint Benedict option when
You mean Pope Benedict
Rome
the
was
16th?
collapsing.
No, I mean
No,
Saint
not
Benedict.
yeah,
Oh,
not
okay.
Pope Benedict, Saint Benedict, but it was
Okay.
because like the when the Roman Empire collapsed, it was falling into moral decay because of the collapse of Roman paganism. Generally, it was the Catholic Church who retreated to the monasteries and to the countryside and brought along, let's just say, the better parts of the Roman tradition with them and preserved that ancient knowledge in the monasteries and in these isolated corners. Like they had to take refuge in the collapse while as the Romans described, barbarian tribes, aka the Germans, were invading and conquering and seizing the Western Roman Empire. And pretty much they had to go through this tempest of 300 years of the Dark Ages after the collapse of Rome. And honestly, I believe that we are entering in that same Dark Age cycle again. And it is going to have to take a very dedicated vanguard of essentially the traditionalists, of the ones willing to weather the storm, to make sure that in future generations there might actually be something left to build the pieces back up of civilization and create a new one. Like, say, the fall of Western Rome was fundamentally the fall of that Roman pagan ideal. And in that time, the Christian civilization found its foundation and rose from those ashes like a phoenix.
Right. I guess it's my turns, and then it will be Will's turn. I guess, I mean, I guess what I, okay. So I guess my position, is that morally speaking, the church should always be unquestioned. But then when it comes to purely temporal matters, like the speed limit, the church obviously the state is going to reign in matters that are only relevant to the state, and this is kind of the Catholic social teaching, that the state, so the speed limit, whatever, Archbishop, Archbishop Strickland ain't going to have any influence on whether or not the speed limit coming out of the McDonald's is 25 miles an hour, 50. I'm not saying Archbishop Strickland goes to McDonald's. I'm just throwing out random names that I know. Is he even an archbishop? I don't know. Is he the one from Texas? I don't know. But too much caffeine, and it's me.
Yes,
So yeah. But in areas where there is this sort of overlap where the state has to make laws, because ultimately every law is going to have a moral component to it. The state should always subordinate itself to the moral teaching of the church, and it's sort of within that, and that and you may think that that's making the church a total, the state a total slave to the church, but in actuality uh it's essentially giving you it's essentially giving society guardrails, where you can, and those guardrails are preventing you from falling into the cesspool that, well, we live in right now. Um, and you can play around within those guardrails and find a spot that, society will like, should we punish shoplifters with a slap on the wrist, or allow, or 2 weeks in jail, or should we let people shoplift their houses and see how they like it? Huh?
Or should we go really old school and cut off their hands?
Ooh, I like that idea.
Oh,
I do not like that idea at all.
oh, are you
No
saying you're
one
a
is not
shoplifter?
endorsing dismemberment.
Keep in mind,
we're
Monarchist
not,
of America.
we're not Bedouins here. Hey.
Oh no, I do not endorse dismemberment.
Keep in mind, Monarchist of America and Monarchist Minute does not. What's the word I'm looking for here? Support cutting people's
Endorse.
hands off. Endorse cutting people's hands off. We do not endorse that as an organization.
Unless
We
the
do
hand
not,
is
we do not
gangrene.
endorse
The opinion-
embracing Bedouin tribal practices.
The opinions of individual members do not reflect the organization as a whole.
It's not it's not even my
Even if their
belief,
opinions
but
are
I
based.
feel like we didn't express the full range of extremes of how to handle shoplifters.
Yes, I know, but if you or someone you know believes that his hand needs to be cut off for reasons of frostbite or other reasons, consult your local physician. But Aiden would probably have some things to say if he were here. But yeah, no. So I mean, but so the church will lay down the moral cases, murder wrong, and all these XYZ things are wrong, and then the state will have the ability to play around and find something that works best for the particular people in society. And because a monarch, by nature, a monarch is going to have to be religious if he's going to be a good monarch, I would think, because a good monarch, because the thing with our government, and the thing with a lot of our governments around the world today, is they just, if the people in the government are actually good, quote unquote, at least by modern standards, those people will consider the temporal welfare of the subjects. And that's fine and dandy, and the king, being a temporal sovereign, is going to have to consider the material welfare of his people too. But ultimately, the best monarchs also understood that there was the spiritual welfare of the people, which is why, and Saint King Louis IX, he went around making sure that he would go around giving alms and whatnot, but he would also, and that's why he enforced moral laws. For the spiritual benefit of the people, because because it was part of his job was to help his subjects get to heaven, as in anyone else who's in authority. I mean, we're all supposed to, in a certain degree, we're all supposed to help each other get to heaven, not as like a stated job or anything, but we're supposed to uh, live good Christian lives, and if we're supposed to help people live good Christian lives. And a king, especially given that he is the supreme temporal leader from which all temporal authority flows in a kingdom, well, maybe from the emperor. still working on that problem. Well, I'm not really, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But as the source of temporal authority, he also has a spiritual duty to help his people. I guess in the same way that a bishop may also have a responsibility to his priests to make sure that they all have a place to sleep at night, assuming that they're diocesan priests and not being sent to East Africa or wherever, or Portland or some other or the Sahara
Yeah.
Desert.
Oh, some
Portland,
other
the
third
Sahara
world
Desert, some
country.
other desolate wasteland. Okay.
Yes, yes. And continuing off of your point, I'd like to bring a quotation from St. Thomas Aquinas in his book De Regno, De Ad Regum Cyprii, which is on kingship to the king of Cyprus, which is, for those listening, a basic explanation of the Catholic monarchism kind of perspective. But he says that the difference between a monarchy and a tyranny is whether or not the king is a good Christian, because, in his opinion, if if a king does not have religion and religious morals to to restrict himself, basically, then the only thing restricting him is his own, to use an anachronistic term, sadistic imagination. Right? The only thing stopping him from doing whatever is what he can think of. And so there needs to be a limit on what he can do from above, not from below, not from the people, but from God.
Which is sort of, I guess, it goes into the whole notion of popular sovereignty, and we can get into the trial of King Charles I for the umpteenth time.
Oh, that'd be fun.
The
But
quick
yes,
answer to the trial of King Charles I, it was a mistake.
agreed.
That's more succinct than I could ever make it.
I think Cromwell's existence was a mistake.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I just said. You just said it differently.
No, I know.
Cromwells,
Who
by the
wants
way,
to?
both Cromwells. Because
Was-
there
Yeah,
was two.
There was two.
Was
Oh yeah, there was two.
Cromwell perhaps an early version of the Antichrist beta, perhaps?
Well,
No, actually, here's actually how Antichrist, the classical interpretation of it. Most people try to think of like one figure being Antichrist, because especially low church Protestants think that there's only going to be one. Generally, Antichrist is always used for somebody who goes against the laws of God and the right of His church. So, like, if a monarch turned against God, he'd be labeled Antichrist. If a regime attacked the church in any way, they'd be labeled Antichrist. During the Russian Civil War, the Bolsheviks were really called Antichrist for killing the Tsar because they harmed God's regent upon earth. It's like that's the classical use of the word Antichrist, not like the low church Protestant, the Antichrist is going to come, yada yada.
Are you saying Pastor Jim Bob has misled the populace yet again?
I'm saying he's always
He's
always misled everyone forever. Because low church Protestantism is always theologically wrong.
Does that
Well,
mean Pastor Jim Bob is technically an Antichrist?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Well, here's you know what? Will, you often get on us about prop bashing, so how about we Puritan bash for a while? Just yell at Cromwell
They
for
were
existing.
Puritan bashing for one reason and one reason only. Puritans are Calvinists.
They're
Calvinists
Protestants
are
too.
predestined to have bad theology.
All Protestants are predestined to have bad theology. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Not
well,
all
Calvinist
you.
specific.
We have to. You have to remember, my Catholic friends. Not all Protestants commit heresy equally.
Not equally,
Just
but they all
in-
commit heresy.
Yeah, just varies out the measure. Yeah, well, yeah, no, but Calvinist double predestination is like,
Ew.
yeah, it's also like, if I don't get it. I mean, if they think that a certain if they think that a certain group, that if everyone who isn't the elect is destined to hell, then what's the
Yeah.
point of anything?
We
Like,
have
if
to consider some of our listeners may not be so inclined on theology. For those who maybe don't know this point as well as we might, predestination in the Catholic sense and the standard sense, are called single predestination, is the belief that God loves you and wants you to go to heaven, but you might stray from His path. So He predestines you to go to heaven, but you can choose to stop that which would be going to hell. Calvinists, their beliefs can be summed up by God loves you, asterisk, and the asterisk, I can't talk. The asterisk is he actually doesn't, because God does not love you if you're a Calvinist, according to them, not me.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
I thought. Hold on. So I may need to pull out the Denzinger. I thought that the Catholic definition of predestination was that the elect as a group of people, nothing. There was an elect as a group of people, and that, but everyone else would
Wow, Charles and I have the same speech impediment.
No, but
Hmm.
I thought, I don't know. I'm gonna have to do research because I heard a slightly different thing
It-
for what the
it's
elect
not
was in the
different enough.
Catholic perspective.
It's not different enough to be heresy, so we're all right.
Anyway, shall we get back on topic? Because we kind
Yes,
of
we are wildly off topic, and we've been on it for 30 minutes.
Well,
What do you
30
mean?
minutes
That's
minus
every
4.
podcast.
Yeah, every podcast. We've actually been doing fairly
Average
well
solo
tonight.
podcast.
I think we've been doing fairly well tonight, to be fair.
Would tend to agree with that.
Anyway, it's my
And
turn.
you mentioned Calvinism, and we know someone who was raised a Calvinist but has converted to the Catholic faith. He is the head of one of our partner servers. He, let's just say, he has not been able to be reached. He informed a couple members of his server that he needed to speak with them about something urgent. They are still in the dark about that, and he has not been able to be reached after he sent that ping at 4:30 this morning in his server. We would like to extend our thoughts and prayers to him that he may be found and that he may be unmolested and unharmed, and that the worst has not happened.
Anyway, I believe it's my turn, yes?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Alright, I kind of want to follow up with what Constantine and Charles said. I think there's situations where a church is better suited and situations where a secular monarch is better suited. For example, church has always been a strong moral authority, so maybe on legal matters or matters of ethics a church would be suitable for. But should the church be making tax policy? Should the church be commanding the military? Absolutely not.
What
So
do you mean? It was epic when
authority?
bishops led men into battle. That was epic.
Bishop clubs.
It should just depend on the context of the issue.
Still epic. Literally, there's like bishops' set of armor, like knight-like armor that bishops would wear. It was cool.
Yes, it might be aesthetically pleasing, but how many bishops today would you trust to lead an army into
I mean,
battle?
Yeah,
my bishop's pretty cool, man. I don't know. He might be able to do it.
yeah. Let's ask all of the military chaplain priests and the bishops in the militaries. Let's ask
The
them.
battle priest.
Ah, yes. See, now we're just one step closer to dropping cathedrals on people.
Yes, well, until the cathedrals need to start walking, and then we'll truly have epic battlefields.
Ah, yeah.
Warhammer 40K podcast.
Yes. Also, we need giant space knights to drop from space and deliver the Emperor's holy divine will.
But the
Welcome to
Emperor is a
Imperial
full
Minute.
god.
This
Okay.
has been your Warhammer detour for this podcast.
I think this is the
I mean,
first time we've done a Warhammer
brought-
detour.
Brought to you by
It-
Trad Raider and Darth Kilhoun. We'll do another one if he's on as well.
Literally, also, Warhammer is the most reactionary sci-fi setting that we have today. So Yeah.
The most reactionary sci-fi setting so far.
So far.
Well, so I mean, it's kind of hard to top 40K. Like,
Yeah.
good
Well,
luck.
actually, I do have this question for you. So, would it technically still be sci-fi if the plot of the story is people travel to new planet, but then the ship that has all the technology that they travel on died, so they had to restart over from basically the medieval period? Is that still technically sci-fi, even if like all the sci-fi technology is only there in the introductory spiel?
Yes.
If you're talking about if there's any scientific aspect to it, then yes. If not, not really. I mean, you can have regular fiction about people with that had science stuff no longer having science stuff. The science is integral.
Well, essentially, I don't know. Yeah, I just want an excuse for people to fight it out with 1930s technology on a completely different world. But you'll never guess who's going to still be in charge, despite the fact that they're cut off from him. The heir of the House of
1930s.
Stewart.
Oh yeah.
Setting like that, I call that rust punk, which is basically like they're a medieval society, but they exist in the shell of a far more advanced civilization.
Alright.
like Mad
AKA
Max.
literally. Well, I mean, we're like that has happened on this planet too. Like we could discuss like the Mesopotamians, like when they collapsed and then they pretty much degraded in terms of like technology. Like I don't consider technology as like a sign of progress, like most liberals do, but like the Bedouins lived in like that area for a while, and they definitely weren't like to the technological level of even the ancient Mesopotamians. Most of the advanced institutions and stuff used by the Romans and the Roman Empire weren't rebuilt until like really late, like after Charlemagne and like all that, and the Carolingian Empire. Besides like Byzantium, they still ran some of the advanced institutions of the Roman Empire, but not as many as there used to be at its height. What else? Oh yeah, literally Alexander the Great marching into ancient Egypt when ancient Egypt had effectively declined and had been conquered by foreign peoples at that point. Yeah, there's many cases.
Oh, that's actually a good one.
Ancient Egypt on its
A topic for a future episode, like the nature of technology and why people think just because we have iPhones we're better than everyone else, even though we're not.
That's
That is a topic to discuss at a.
Oh yeah, that's right. I
Later.
said a future episode.
We will speak of it later.
Yeah,
Probably in the next
Wake history is cringe.
But for
Oh, man.
now, I
Right,
think we've
already?
gone around the room.
Agreed.
All right.
Nigeria, everyone. Everyone's favorite country to definitely not pronounce wrong. Let us.
Isn't Cardinal Sarah from Nigeria, or is he from? Where is he from?
He is from Nigeria because Nigeria speaks French, I think. Let me check though.
Nigeria speaks English. It's the other one that speaks French.
Niger.
Yep.
The one that you definitely don't pronounce wrong. Ah, yes. Well,
The one that I
close
definitely
enough.
don't pronounce wrong because I am well adjusted to society.
Yes. So I don't know what we're talking about Nigeria because I wasn't paying attention. What are we doing about Nigeria?
Most
There was
Christian
a
martyrs in
report-
this century are from Nigeria.
There
Most
was
what?
a report that just came out that said that like 80-something% or something crazy of martyrs are from Nigeria, and specifically northern Nigeria. Just
That
this
was-
week, there was, I believe, a priest killed.
A Catholic priest?
I'd
I
assume
think so.
that would actually track because the basically the big border right now between Islam and Catholicism in Africa is on Nigeria and in the Sahara in general. So that does not surprise me that that's kind of the big battleground.
Of course, the Trump administration put Nigeria on their special like list of travel concern thing,
It's one of the most dangerous nations on the planet.
and the Biden administration took Nigeria off of that list.
Fun.
Of course they did.
it's racist to care about your safety, don't you know?
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah, I think that safety is a white supremacist concept, and we should go back to when the good old days when
We should go back to nuking random countries, honestly.
Agreed, bro. MacArthur grinds that. No. Before we get canceled online. Yeah, there's been a lot of religious persecution all over kind of North and Western Africa. So it doesn't surprise me that like 80% of martyrs are from Nigeria or something ridiculous like that. That honestly is not a surprise to me, though it is kind of saddening.
It is incredibly, I'll just say that we're probably the only American outlet that isn't, specifically like Christian. Well, we are real, well, we are
I
de
mean,
facto, we are de facto Christian, but we are the only sort of political outlet in the United States that is even shining a light on this issue and giving it the air to breathe. Everyone else is just, like,
The
don't
only
look over
thing-
here.
The only thing I gotta say is, any other time in history, this would justify a crusade.
I'm on that. I think Will is onto something here. I think we may need a crusade. Maybe we pray that the Holy Father will set us anew upon Nigeria and let us cleanse the land of heathen blood. Though I do not.
No.
MOA does not condone that. By the way, just me.
I'm always curious why the papacy never set aside some of the massive amount of funding it gets in donations to create like a private military group specifically designed to protect Christians who are being persecuted.
well,
They used to have that. It was the military orders, Ordem Militar.
People
But
Zouaves, I think they were.
well,
that was
I'm
for the
referring.
that was for the papal state
No,
specifically.
I was referring to the military order of the Sovereign Knights of Malta, the military order of the Temple of St. John. Basically, these military orders that nowadays are more social clubs and humanitarian groups. Like when it comes to the Sovereign Order of Malta, they're definitely more of a humanitarian nowadays. They don't do fighting because they don't have soldiers, but I do think we need to bring back true military sovereign orders.
Concur.
Okay. The American one can be, well, I think we all know which one. We don't need to elaborate further. Well, we might want to stick those people onto the great state, the great white north, not the great white north state of Minnesota.
Canada like
Yes.
Oh boy, here we go.
Minnesota. Charles and I are going to have a fun time.
Well,
Yes.
fun as in
Destroy the Minnesota government. Yeah, go ahead and elaborate on our topic there, Victor, so Charles and I may tear into it.
Okay. Well, as everybody knows, today, January 20th, is the March for Life. The Minnesota government today put in a bill which would not only would it repeal the Minnesota statute that protects the lives of babies born in botched abortions, but here's the insidious part. It would also allow a doctor to perform an abortion on an unconscious woman who cannot give consent to it. Constantine, what you were saying?
Oh, I just said, oh.
Okay.
yeah, that's kind.
this defeats the entire purpose behind the pro-choice argument that's about women's choice, because this explicitly takes away the choice from women.
Yeah,
So how is this not about killing babies then?
you're supposed to ignore
I
that.
will say for the I will say that I would highly doubt that a doctor would perform a shock abortion on a woman who is going in for, or who was hit by a car. I would not, and was unconscious. I do not believe that a doctor would actually perform an abortion in that circumstance. But this Minnesota state law, not law, this proposal that is not law yet would make it so that they are able to do so. Now,
It's
a little
what
thing about Minnesota politics. Their Senate is an odd number of people, and the Democrats hold the majority in that body by one vote. So in the Minnesota State Senate, only one Democrat has to break, and the Republicans have to hold firm in order for this bill to get defeated in the Minnesota State Senate.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I will admit, the first to admit, that I have not read the bill, and I'm doing the thing that I really don't like doing, which is just getting it from hearsay. But if this is true, I am hoping that there is at least one. Well, I mean, even if it is less extreme, either way, I'm hoping that the Democrat will say, you know, maybe murdering children shouldn't be on the party platform. Maybe, just saying. But it's just okay. I don't understand conceivably why someone would want to allow abortion in the case of the woman being unconscious.
Yeah, that seems specific to me.
Like, is there like some wacko incident, or not wacko, but some weird incident where this happened or something? I don't.
My only guess could be that it could be like in situations where due power of attorney can't be found, or
but that's
like
still insidious.
really dire circumstances where, again, it goes into the issue, maybe the life of the mother is in peril. If we're going to give benefit of the doubt.
But
Well, I mean, in that instance, because you have to understand that technically, in a if there's a procedure that doesn't directly kill the child that's necessary for the saving of the mother's life, but it's not directly killing the child, that technically that's not an abortion. That's another procedure. And if there was a way
Well,
to save,
in the medical community, they still call it an abortion. So,
well, the medical community is wrong. Anyway,
Let's get Aiden to
it is just.
but
It firstly. Oh, sorry, you were gone. Sorry, my bad.
okay, no, but I mean, but in that instance, morally speaking, the mother has a choice, because if it's one life or the other, the mother has a choice. I think and like I said, if at any point I accidentally say something wrong, then from the church's point of view, please correct me, and I recanted the error. But if it's one life or the other, then the mother can either make the heroic thing and say the child, or the or my
less heroic.
the less, and because it is a difficult position, and this is why we should always be funding ways to make sure that we don't have to make a choice, and that both lives can be saved. And maybe, as opposed to funding money into our endless foreign wars, we could that aren't really protecting the nation, we could be putting money into new medical procedures that will protect mothers and children. But I guess my point is that if a mother is unconscious, then it you might just have to. I mean, it's a difficult question, so I don't really. I think at that point, you just I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, assuming. I mean, at the very least, it should be possible from a religious standpoint. It should be possible to baptize a child because there is a medical device that was developed, and I'm not sure if it's still something in hospitals. I can't remember what it's called, but it was a way of baptizing children who were still in the womb, when doctors thought that the child was probably going to die. Um, so at the very least, in that situation where it wouldn't be an abortion because it's not directly killing the child. Okay, and I want to be clear that no matter what, I'm going with whatever the church says. So if the church says, "Hey, Chuck, you're misunderstanding here," I will submit. I always submit to the church.
But on the whole baptism thing, isn't it doctrine that unborn children are always safe from damnation?
Well, okay. So
okay. Well, okay. We need to be clear about this because okay. So some of the early Catholic Church fathers and theologians have taught about some technically speaking, it is part of hell, but it is a place called limbo, like limbo of the infants, where the unborn people they don't get to
suffer.
experience the beatific vision of heaven, but they also don't have to suffer from the effects of original sin. Or rather, they don't have to suffer anything, and the angels minister to them. But they do not get to experience the beatific vision of heaven.
And I don't know if the church specifically has ruled on the issue of dead infants, but
I don't think they have ruled definitively. I am just giving what was always like traditionally believed.
yeah,
I am not
and
making any sort of pronouncement here.
yeah, and I think that it is within. And once again, if somebody who knows better can on these issues, please correct us.
I asked the question because I watched a video from an Orthodox channel that actually talked specifically about that topic, the salvation of unborn children.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's historically the limbo because limbo theologically is a place that exists because there was the limbo of the just, which is where the souls of all the that's where Abraham and Adam and Isaiah and all the Old Testament and all the people who died before Christ's saving mission was accomplished. That's where they all went.
Now, then what about the harrowing of hell? Because didn't Jesus basically...
specifically,
Well, now, wait a
specific.
second.
I'll let you finish, but specifically, that was called Limbo of the Fathers, which was a different, I suppose, thing to Limbo of the Infants, is what the other one was called.
Now, what about then what exactly is the thing behind the harrowing of hell, of course, where
Okay,
Jesus
so
kicks in the
what was
door and takes everyone to heaven?
all right, so Howling of Hell, basically what some people, and I think this is something that can be piously believed, but I don't believe it's been dogmatically defined. So we have to be careful here. When Jesus was crucified and died, he went down into hell and brought the fathers like Adam and Eve and Abraham and Moses, etc., up to heaven. Now, please, If this has been dogmatically defined, then someone please tell us in the comments.
Well,
But go ahead.
no, I think so. So since limbo is technically part of hell, like I think that when Christ ascended to hell, that's where he went to get to announce to the just the tidings of their redemption. Um, and then and then on Easter Sunday they all got to go to heaven. At least I think it was Easter Sunday. And then yeah, I think that's so that when Christ descended into hell, that's what that meant. Because technically limbo is a part of hell and I think the reason why it's technically a part of hell is because you're dead and you're separated from God, because that's technically the definition of hell, is separation from God. But the souls of the just were, going to get there.
I think a better way to phrase it is that when you're in limbo, you're in hell, but when you're in limbo, you're not damned.
Yeah.
It's
Unless
basically like
that's
a divine waiting room.
not really.
I mean,
No, you're thinking of purgatory, which is where Catholics, and I don't know about Orthodox, but Catholics believe that we are purged of venial sins before we go to heaven. That's different.
yeah.
You don't get out of limbo.
Well, the just got the people in the limbo of the just got out of limbo, but not
Well,
the
that was after
not
Christ.
if there is the limbo of infants. And like I said, I don't think the church has specifically ruled on the on infants specifically, because I think there were some church fathers who said, yeah, infants go right to heaven, but if those below the age of reason, so 7, anyone below the age of reason would go right to heaven. Or there were those who died below the age of 7 who weren't baptized, who would go to the limbo of the just. I think that those are, and I guess this is what it boils down to, there are 2 acceptable positions on that, and if the church has definitively ruled one way or another, then okay. And at a deference to the church, in case she has, then I will not state my personal opinion, but I will say, either way, get your kid baptized. Don't do the stupid. I'm gonna wait till the kid's like 7 or whatever thing that some of the people like to do for whatever reason. Get the kid baptized. Don't
Right,
tarry.
So let us go back to the topic at hand and talk about Minnesota. And Friedrich is back with us now, so I think he has more info than I actually had. So go ahead.
I mean, I can't really say much. I don't really know what was stated before.
Okay,
Just
I basically gave the provisions of the bill. I mentioned the 1-seat down majority in the Minnesota State Senate. Could you? I think the contents of the bill could use some clarification.
I don't have the bill as of right now because I always have trouble trying to find those stuff.
All right, so, but just some general thoughts on Minnesota.
It's Minnesota. It's one of the most kind of weird states when it comes politics wise, because it's a very left leaning state. It's voted Democrat at every single presidential election, with the only time it hasn't being Nixon's blowout against McGovern. And
Now, I
even
will-
not even Reagan won it in 1984, although that was mainly just due to the fact that the candidate was from Minnesota.
Now, I will say in Minnesota's defense, the only reason it is very left-leaning hinges on its large urban areas, and the rest of the state is very sparse.
That is true. That is true. It's because most of the population is, of course, just concentrated in the Twin Cities. But you have to also understand it's not that it's not also just the Twin Cities. It's that one of the reasons that keeps it from having flipped Republican in multiple tight races is due to the fact of the northeastern part of the state. Usually around like the major cities there are ancestral Democrat and so voted such for years.
My opinion on Minnesota is that it's cold.
No.
Very much cold.
This
I've
is
been to
indeed one of the
Minnesota.
statements of all time.
The Midwesterners among us will now rant on Minnesota existing for a while.
No. In all seriousness, though, Minnesota's doing interesting things politically. I don't like said interesting things, but I don't live in Minnesota. I wish I could stop it, but I can't.
Right. So I think we've covered beat this topic to death.
I concur. Does everyone else concur?
Concur.
Ditto.
I guess so.
Concur.
Ditto. That's a Will statement for sure.
That is such a Will statement.
That is so Will.
That's
right.
I
So
love ditto.
the
That's a good word.
right. So the budget.
Yippee, budget.
Now we get into
Aside,
the
boys.
real fun meat and taters of this podcast.
So here's what we need to talk about. What happens when you sit down and spend money you don't have repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again without any regard to how you're going to pay it back until you eventually gathered so much debt, you've hit a hard limit that you can't borrow anymore.
Me, Mr. Stout. Me, Mr. Stout, please.
I
Will, I
think
know this one.
that you've realized that the you're
I know the answer. Mr.
Trent
Stout.
wants to answer the question. Okay.
I know the answer.
Professor
Will, I know the answer.
For a second, I thought you said mute Mr. Stout for a second. It's like, what?
No. I
you?
said Mr. Stout. Mr. Stout, I know the answer.
What's the answer?
You get $31 trillion in debt.
That is correct.
Can I provide a supplementary answer?
For all intents and purposes, the government has maxed out its credit card. The only difference is instead of getting an absolute horrible credit score, when the government maxes out its credit card, it can just apply for a new credit card with legislation.
And it doesn't. Well, it's not really applying for a new credit card more than
Just
it's
raising their own
it's
maximum.
It's more the fact that they're basically just like, hey, make it have more money.
Yeah,
Print more money. Money printer go burr.
And what happens if you say no to the government? And what happens when you say no to the government increasing the maximum on their credit card?
You get shot.
You get shot.
No.
Thank you, Constantine.
Oh, JFK.
Yeah, no,
No. You commit suicide.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, 3 gunshots to the back of the head.
To the back of the
Two
head.
bullet
Yeah,
holes,
exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just so I see all these ads for things like, national debt relief on TV. I'm not getting targeted. I don't really like the fact that I have a credit card. I'd rather have a debit card, but whatever.
I've never owned a credit card. I am very proud of that fact.
Same.
I never
only
have
have
either.
it.
I
I'm
support
also
you in your
super proud of
endeavor,
that.
but I didn't want a credit card either.
Unfortunately, some of you are going to realize this. If you don't have a credit card, you're probably not going to be able to build credit in order for you to buy a home or rent a home or buy a home.
Well,
or-
actually,
That only depends. That only
okay,
depends.
okay,
Actually.
so-
It depends upon who.
Hang on a
upon
second.
who.
Hang on a second. Everyone shut up for a second.
Okay.
I don't think credit score should matter if you're renting, because you know what? Most landlords and most credit bureaus do not count rent toward your credit. So if they don't count rent
This is
payments
true. This
toward
is
your
true. My
credit,
apology. This is
No, no,
true.
well-
if they don't count rent payments toward your credit, then they should not have to require your credit score to rent.
yeah.
Okay, so that is true.
Amen.
However, your credit score would determine things such as your ability to get a good deal on your car loan or your mortgage payment if you
Oh,
decide to
don't-
purchase
Well,
a home.
You don't have to tell me about getting a good deal on my car loan with no credit. The first time I bought a car and had to finance it, I got smacked in the face with 12.25% interest.
Yes,
Well-
but getting off of personal finance and getting back to macroeconomics,
government.
everyone's favorite topic. Leon made a point in a couple of chats. He said that it's stupid that we have this debt issue and that we're deciding to raise our own maximums when we're still pouring out billions in dollars to the Ukrainian government.
I agree. We should pour more money into the Ukrainian.
Anyone who knows me knows I have no problem with Ukraine. I support their struggle against Russia, but
Who needs a couple $100 billion in monies?
Yeah,
we
not
have
me.
no business sending money to Ukraine.
Exactly. That's for the Europeans to worry about.
Unless
Yeah,
we're
it's not our
actively in a
problem.
war unless we're actively in a war, we do not need to be sending that atrocious amount of money.
Or if the Russians were actually competent.
And
yeah.
Of course, because we're basically Europe's security daddy. We basically have to do everything because Europe doesn't want. Because apparently we have the money to do it, and the rest of Europe apparently doesn't. Or
And
they
I
think that
okay,
we should be the one
Hang
that
on,
fund
Unless
everything.
it's Eastern Europeans, because usually the Eastern Europeans pay for their.
Right. Victor, but since you said that, can I go off tangent for a second to rack on
Please.
Chancellor Scholz of Germany?
Please.
Okay, so Chancellor Scholz of Germany has refused to send not only has he refused to send tanks to Ukraine, he has basically stood in the way of Poland sending their Leopard 2 tanks that they lawfully bought from Germany, fully paid for, to Ukraine. I mean, personally, yeah, I get it. They're manufactured in Germany. But Poland paid for those. They have the right to send them. And you want to know what Chancellor Scholz said? He is not going to send tank and artillery support to Ukraine until the U.S. sends some. And the U.S. sent some. And want to know what he did? He moved the goalpost. Now he won't send support until the U.S. sends Abrams tanks.
Okay. Oh, we were so close.
Yes, let's
Actually,
get
no, we weren't.
Abrams over there. We need to test them out.
No. So
I agree with your statement. We need to test those out. They were made to fight the Russians. They deserve the dignity of being able to blow Russians in orbit.
Well, they did blow a bunch of
Into
Russian-made
orbit.
tanks into orbit.
Bye, Mr. Putin.
No.
I mean,
Here's
that is objectively my most favorite part of all the military assistance that we have been sending to Ukraine. The one good side is watching all the live leak footage of Ukrainian soldiers using javelins to put T-84, whatever the model of tank is, and sending their turrets into orbit.
Well, I mean, you also had to remember that there's probably a lot of instances of Ukrainian T-72s getting blown into orbit, but the Russians, generally speaking, don't have as good a Wi-Fi connection. No, but
we need to get back on the spending issue.
Okay, I'll just say this on the last point of the Ukrainian diversions. I do think we're being a little unfair on our European puppets because when you are when you control countries, you generally you don't really expect your puppets to do things because you expect them to do what you tell them to do. So
Well,
and we're
America
supposed to
doesn't
support our
have
puppets
puppets.
regimes.
America doesn't have puppets. The Europeans don't do what we tell them. They just leech off of our defense budget.
Accurate. That is accurate.
Okay, yeah, I kind of realized halfway through what I was saying wasn't really right, but I decided to commit to the bit.
On spending, Charles, how long have we been on this topic? Because there's a specific point I want to make about the time lapsed.
We made about 8 minutes.
9 minutes. In that time, the government has spent about $70 million. Because the government spends $7 million a minute. And we'll just round up to 10. That's $70 million in the time we've been talking about it. That is horrendous. That is more than most people can spend in an entire lifetime. let alone
More than people
10
make in an
minutes.
entire lifetime.
More than people see or touch in an entire lifetime. 10 minutes. And the government has spent over, 10 times what most people will ever see when it comes to money. That is ridiculous. And consider that the US government was, in the time of Washington's presidency, was already having issues with debt. In the time of the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, the United States was about $4 billion in debt. In the time of the presidency of Herbert Hoover, we were about 7, roughly around there, $1 billion in debt. By the time of FDR, we were $3 trillion in debt. And now
No. We didn't go above 1 trillion until Reagan, who decided outspending the Soviets was a
You know
good
what?
enough idea to.
No, I might have had my number. It might have been more like 30 billion, not 3 trillion. My bad. But yeah, we did hit trillion with Reagan. The amount of spending that the U.S. government has done has increased exponentially in recent times. We're spending more. I think we're spending a horrendous amount more than we did back even during Reagan's day, or even during FDR's day, which was like the big thing for government spending was FDR, and we're spending horrendous amounts of money more than he ever could. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I think that the U.S. government needs to what do you do when you have a kid who's been given a credit card and goes off and just keeps spending and spending and spending and spending? You take it away from him. You tell him you have to stop spending money on that card.
Maybe
We've
I
got.
I was going to say.
You need to corral the U.S. government and get it to stop spending such atrocious amounts of money.
You
Yeah, but
know,
that's hard.
the saddest part about the U.S. debt situation is we actually borrow money to pay interest on the money we already borrowed.
Which is so stupid, but
That's spiraling.
It's really, our government has been fiscally irresponsible for the longest time.
worst credit score I've ever seen.
Besides mine, of
You're
course.
$31 trillion in debt and you're still getting loans? What is wrong with you?
We should probably contact National Debt Relief.
Honestly, I know it would be disastrous for the country, but I would love for the U.S. government to have to file bankruptcy and then navigate the nightmare that is U.S. bankruptcy law.
I don't think.
Just the irony of it.
Yeah, but imagine, imagine like the U.S. government committing to okay. I mean, this is gonna get to some dark humor. But like, imagine if the U.S. government just, as an institution, committed suicide over going bankrupt.
Dude.
What happened with that Onion skit where the U.S. government fabricated a fake coup?
Dude, attention!
Who remembers that skit?
Oh, I love that one. Attention, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The United States and its vast debt no longer exists.
That brings us to an interesting question. If a monarchy was installed in the United States, how would we handle debt? Would we incur the debt of our previous government? Would we renounce it and have to explain to other governments and people of the world why we're not going to be paying them back? How would that work?
That would depend on how the monarchy was established. If the monarchy formed as a direct consequence of the reform of the United States through peaceful measures, I think we would have to incur the debt, as we would be, in effect, still the United States. We would just be under a different form of government. But if the U.S. were to stay like in a absolute nightmare scenario, would collapse or balkanize, and then we'd have to rebuild it from scratch, I think then we could justify that we're a separate entity and we do not incur the debt of our predecessor.
I like
we also have to mention that as long as Social Security payments get dished out, everybody else that the U.S. government owes money to could legally say, you need to pay up. And I know that the Social Security spigot is probably never, ever going away.
This is a brief reminder that technically, by the way it functions, the Social Security is by definition a Ponzi scheme. Because it is a scheme that pays out the people who are already in it by people who are paying in it.
Pay us now. It's literally like the creepy dude around the corner with like a trench coat. It's like, hey, if you pay me now and like once you retire, I'll pay you back. You can trust me. I'm a
It
reliable
is
payer.
by definition a Ponzi scheme. If stockholders and stockbrokers and anyone else can't do it, then why can't the U.S. government do it and expect
because-
U.S. citizens
Because
to
they have
survive?
guns, silly. They
Yeah,
can
no, I
shoot
mean-
you if you disagree.
Yeah, no, I mean people will say, "Oh, well, the mob does this and the government does it. What's the difference?" Well, I mean, when the government's acting legitimately with taxes, it's not the same thing as the mob because the government isn't just protecting you from itself, it's also providing you with legitimate goods and services besides protecting you from itself. But that being said, just remember that income tax is the price we pay to not go to jail for tax evasion. But with Social Security, it's just I would happily pay Social Security and then when it gets to my turn, I'll be like, so that I would happily pay Social Security that my hypothetical kids don't pay Social Security, that our generation would be the one to do it. But it's not going to happen realistically, like unless of course the country burns down and we had to build and then we had to start it over again. And in that case, I don't think that military junta or whoever takes over is going to be that concerned about making sure Grandpa Pastor Jim Bob has his Social Security.
The most disgusting thing about how the U.S. treats Social Security is that our government basically treats it as a rainy day fund that they can pull extra money out of if they come up short.
Oh yeah, that I do enjoy that because it ensures that pension. Well, actually, you know what it does? Is Social Security just a ruse to make sure that that the elderly stay involved in politics? Because most people reach a point where I get so old where most people reach the I'm too old to care about this stage. But if all the old people are constantly worried about Social Security,
He's got a point. He's out of line, but he's right.
He's out of line, but he is right. Well, I remember that. Well, I remember from back in my days when I was a PragerU Republican. Yes, shame me all you want. I deserve it.
Oh, I was the same. Don't worry.
I remember how they always used to say, and this still sticks with me. The only reason that the Democrats remain as popular as they are is because they use the welfare state to basically bribe people into voting for them.
it's true. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Bribe and now here's the thing. I hate that they use the word bribe because considering how some people in the US are so incredibly impoverished that they're dependent on these welfare programs, I feel like blackmail would be a more important term. Or like a more appropriate term, I mean.
Yeah.
Like, vote for us or starve.
And we'll destroy your children too.
I mean, we could take like this we could take this welfare state in the rightward direction and be like, yeah, well, if you're going to be on welfare, you're also going to be part of the government's labor battalion, and you're going to now be making roads for the government.
Yeah.
I hate roads. Everyone should ride trains.
Yeah, but in Montana, that's not feasible.
What, in your mountains, you can't really get around by train?
The Swiss would like to disagree with you.
Darth Kilhoun, you must understand, listeners. Darth Kilhoun is a Yeti who lives in the mountains and roars very loudly at night, so he can't exactly get around by train.
Especially when the army makes him pack his Warhammer minis.
Yeah, literally, because they make him pack his Warhammer minis all the time.
Oh, yeah. So,
well, the military does move you around
a
a lot of
nice
people.
meal. Reject modernity. Embrace travel meal. Embrace the pack burrow.
And embrace the labor battalions. Embrace the getting the nation back on its feet through forced labor.
Now, honestly, for once, I agree with your take there. Like, we have so many people incarcerated for various offenses. There's no reason they can't be, like, filling potholes or something.
Well, like the American prison system is kind of only like there's very few other countries with as large of a prison system as we do, and that's because we come from this especially Calvinistic strand of thought where, oh, well, clearly you're unelect, so you're unredeemable. So now we're just going to lock you away from good society forever mentality instead of, oh, you committed a crime and do penance for your crime. It's kind of like a confession, and then you get your penance at the end, and you do that penance, and your sins are, well, you do penance for your sins, and then, well, your sins are forgiven.
I'm of the opinion that I agree with that, but I'm of the opinion that as long as it's not being used for private profit, that the U.S. government should be allowed to draw on the prison population for public works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that obviously my rail enthusiasm is more back from Steam days, but there is something that I kind of like about EMUs and DMUs, just seeing those like long, like the HST in England, and I mean Britain in general. There's just something that I really like about that concept for some reason, even though they don't look nearly as good as any steam
I mean,
locomotive. So if we want high-speed rail,
imagine if how much money California could have saved on its high-speed rail project if they had used their prison population for the unskilled labor.
I mean, like for those advanced projects, though, you would need a lot of specialist labor. Like,
Right.
the thing about like those types of projects, it's really hard just to bring in a general labor force. But it's like basic construction. It's like,
Well, there are some. Well, there may be some, but I mean, California has a large enough prison population to where they probably have one or
oh,
two skilled laborers within that group of prison
Then you
population of
run into
prison.
the
good.
problem that the Egyptians ran into when they built the pyramids, that you don't necessarily want to force skilled labor to do something because then they may sabotage the problem and the project intentionally.
I mean, the Egyptians, they used a mixture of forced labor for, let's just say, mass projects and things that needed to be done by a lot of hands, but it was very simple and straightforward. But then they also used a lot of specialists that they hired and paid very handsomely. So it was kind of a mixture of both when they were building those giant pyramids.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, but I like say forced labor projects in the United States. Okay, let's think about this. So, government buildings. So yeah, it would be nice if like that money went into a local contracting company, but also like we could reduce prison sentences and say, hey, well you're given the option instead of go to prison, you could join this labor battalion and you could build like government buildings and stuff. Work on these projects, and you get a reduced sentence, and you get you get like a below minimum wage pay. So that way, at least you have money when you get out of the prison system, or you join the military, like it used to be.
They could build public housing and help solve other issues associated with poverty, like high cost of living caused by housing shortages.
Yeah. Although we wouldn't want to be copying like the British's the Commons housing that was done. I think it was under a Labor government where they did.
Actually, a political problem with what you're saying here, because the plurality of prisoners in America are black men. So if we do that forced labor thing, it'll be seen as new slavery.
Okay, well, firstly,
We
we're already talking about
don't care about
establishing a
optics.
monarchy, so we don't care about optics. And secondly, this would actually be to the benefit of everyone involved, because at the very least, the prisoners, when they get out of prison, are going to be good at construction jobs, and some of the laborers you might want to start. Some of the laborers might prove themselves worthy or not worthy, or capable of understanding some higher skilled professions. So maybe you've educated, we see, like, we have these prison programs that are designed to educate prisoners, so when they get out of prison they'll be able to find a job. Well, this is the best of both worlds. You get labor out of the prisoners, you're paying the prisoners a minimum wage, and the laborers who have show clear potential will be trained in how to do jobs, so in the end everyone benefits. So and if that leads to, and if people say accusations of new slavery, I don't care, because in 50 years, well, if you've educated an entire class of minorities or whoever, or lower class white people
Now,
or whoever.
now that we're talking about prison reform in a way, we're talking about prison reform. I have a controversial opinion which I want to share here,
Uh-oh.
and I think we should abolish life sentences. And I have a very specific reason for that. One is either because the only reason that someone gets a life sentence is because they're either too dangerous to be released back into society, or they're a repeat offender. If they're a repeat offender, that means that the rehabilitation system has failed to successfully rehabilitate them, and that just means we have to try again. And if they're too dangerous to be released back into society, then we should just hang them anyways.
Well, okay, here's the Catholic.
At least offer them confession before you do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
Sure,
gonna
I'm
do
not
it,
gonna say they're not gonna have a chance at making their peace with the Lord. I'm not cruel. I'm just
Well-
saying they shouldn't basically take up government time and resources, basically waiting for them to die because we're too much of a cowards to just speed up the process.
Well, firstly, the labor battalion thing solves the problem. If you're having someone who's tried for life, then it's not an option. You're gonna work on the chain gang. Gang, that's the sound of the. Anyways, um, but
But if
the
they
thing
are
is
like
that if
some
you
kind of psychopathic criminal that's a danger to society, we obviously don't want to be letting them out for any reason, let
okay,
alone be
well,
using them as free
put them on the
labor.
license plate machine, punching in the. Okay, but
Do they still even have those?
I hope so, because that
I
makes that Mrs. Puff
honestly,
episode even. Oh, guys, I just realized
honestly,
Mrs.
I
Puff
always
and
thought that was a joke, like
I
that
don't
there
know if it's
wasn't
real or not,
actually a
but
real
guys,
thing.
before I finish making my point, I just realized that the Mrs. Puff in prison on the license plate thing is kind of. I may have been intentional because she was the boating school teacher. SpongeBob was such a good show before it wasn't. But anyways, the no, but I mean the thing is that ultimately, ideally speaking, it is not up to. I mean, I think that the church's position, and Pope Francis basically saying, like, in modern society there really isn't a need for the death penalty, is so that any individual person may have, like, all the time that God's going to give him to turn back from whatever horrible crime wound him up in prison in the first place. Like murder, or aggravated assault isn't necessarily something that gets a life sentence, but all of these crimes. So there are circumstances where the church is like, yeah, the death penalty is something that's justifiable. Um, but
Like for people who are considered too dangerous to be detained.
well, yeah, but but essentially, like, since America isn't Mexico, where El Chapo seems to get out of prison no matter what. I mean,
El
since
Chapo escaped an American prison too. He tunneled out.
yeah, that sort of seems an issue with the guard. You see, this is why Alcatraz. We need Alcatraz. I mean, prison on an island surrounded by very choppy waters, where if you escape, you're gonna die. Oh,
Well,
and
you
we
see,
welcome the local shark population. There you go.
that also comes up with my other solution for the death penalty, which is basically we exile them. We have countless uninhabited islands in the Pacific, miles and miles of land in Alaska where nobody lives. We could just throw them out of a plane, and if they live, they live. If they die, oh well.
Well, I mean,
for one, you have to spend money on gas to do that, on the jet fuel. And two, I wouldn't want to subject Alaska's beautiful wilderness to a bunch of corpses.
yeah, and also
We're
there's
eating the bears.
well, you don't really need to feed the bear. I mean, the bears feed themselves. I mean, it's called I mean, if the bears can't feed themselves, then the bears deserve to die or whatever something Darwin said. I'm not an evolutionist, but
Can we appreciate for once that it is I who actually came up with a very controversial and slightly edgy topic for the night?
I think we can
That's
acknowledge
not, like,
that.
honestly, I mean, an execution would be far less resource intensive. I'm just saying, if you're going to go to that extent.
What was
Yeah.
the topic that we've come off track of? Just curious.
wait, were we talking about debt or something?
We were talking about debt.
We were talking about government debt.
I don't know where to make the timestamp, so this is going to be one of those timestamps where it's two topics that aren't really related. So enjoy that, people.
We were talking
government
about
credit
society's debt, and now we start talking about how people should pay their debt to society. There we
Okay.
go.
That's very clever, but I think this is better. The government credit card and the death penalty. Okay. Actually, no. Government. Wait, what did you say, Will?
The debt penalty. There we go.
The debt penalty. No.
There you go. That's the timestamp. Congratulations, Will. You have officially contributed to the publicity role.
I thought you were gonna say you've contributed to the podcast for once, and I'm like, wow, that's mean.
Oh no, he's
A
technically my
bit
boss. So even if
rude.
that was my opinion, I couldn't say it.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
my
good.
vice boss.
Debts and death. Interesting, Leon.
I think the debt penalty is.
The debt penalty's really funny.
Oh, Charles, did you want to take us home?
We're all good, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
An hour and a half. Good, well spent.
All right. Okay. So, have you guys been practicing? Because I'm going to ask you to say it with me a few times. Have you guys been
Okay.
practicing? Oh no, Vic jumped out. Okay.
Oh yes, I was like, is there a specific prayer? And I remember, oh no, we have to do the funny thing first. Yeah, no.
Okay. So, if it's Monday, no. Okay. So, if you would like to join us live on Monarchist Minute and experience the wonder of this podcast, where hopefully there will be more intellectual topics, you can join us on the Discord. Say it with me now. Link in the description below. Come on, Will. Come on, Darth. You need to. Okay. All right. If you would like to join the 2,500 and growing number of people on Twitter and experience what's supposed to be my job, but has effectively just been Will's job since the inception because I'm lazy and don't really use Twitter, you can follow us on Twitter. Say it with me now. Link
in the description
below.
Come on, Darth. You need to do it. Okay. And if you would like to follow us on Gab, where I am very inactive, and you guys need to start DMing me every day saying, hey, have you posted on Gab yet? You can do that. Link in the description below. And I'm going to ask specifically for Darth's participation on this one. If you would like to follow us on a platform where I haven't posted anything and I don't know who's posting stuff because someone has been posting stuff, I'm chalking it up to the ghost of monarchism present. You can follow us on Instagram. Come on, Darth, say it with me, and everyone else, I guess. Link in the description below.
Now that I
For
think
the
about
record,
it,
I am the one that's been posting stuff on Instagram.
Oh, okay, she's just stealing the ghost of monarchism present street cred. Okay.
Unbelievable, William. How could you do this?
All right, and we also have I was going to say a beautiful website, but I mean,
No.
Will does the best he can, but it's not. I didn't mean to be offensive to Will, but I just realized how rude that sounded. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not like anyone else put together that site or worked on it. I just get a bunch of DMs every now and then telling me to grammar check it.
Okay. Okay.
So
I'm
yeah,
very
I just
sorry,
started
Will.
handing people admin access to the site. It's like, here, you have a problem, you fix it.
Okay. Well, no. I mean, I do like from what I remember, you do a great job. It's just that you're limited by not being a website designer professionally. You're
Well,
you're a washing machine engineer. Well, not an engineer yet. Are you going to design the
No
next generation of washing
dryers,
machine?
thank you very
Dryer.
much.
Dryer.
oh,
Are
how
you going to
dare you
design the next
offend him?
generation of dryer?
Why can't the dryer be on the? Why can't it open from the top? Actually, I'll ask you that in the VC later.
Yeah.
We need to finish
Okay.
up.
Okay, yeah. So, if you would like to visit our website, which I'm going to say it's beautiful, you can click on that. Wait, you can join us by clicking it, but you can do that by joining us in the link in the description
Description below.
Below, okay. And Darth,
He's not
for the
here, I
last,
don't believe.
okay. Well, I'm gonna, okay.
You're
And if you
forcing me to
hold on,
do stuff. No.
Yeah, okay, hold on. If you would like to watch the very uncooperative Darth Kilhoun, you can go to his channel by clicking on the link in the description below.
Hello.
And
He kinda
join
did
us
it.
for the Dark Council.
Yes,
Yeah.
join us for the Dark
which-
Council podcast, hosted by myself and Darth. It's mostly Darth's podcast, though, because he's been on one more episode than I have.
Yeah, and I've been on it
yeah.
as Bob's guest, and that was great. But look up episode 3 for my fun name. But with that, all of that being said, you can join us doing stuff. You know what? Okay. So, okay.
Victor's not here for prayer, so do you want someone to fill in for him?
Yeah, if you could do the response, that would be great. So, I'm thinking.
I don't know the last few prayers, like anything at Hail Holy Queen. I don't remember. So.
Oh well, I mean, we don't really have a special occasion to pray for. So, well, actually, so we'll do the Our Father, and I don't know if there's a response for the memorial prayer. So I guess I'll just do the entirety of the memorial prayer for the Minnesota thing. So yeah, we will do an Our Father, and then I'll do the memorial. So 3:20, 3:30. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known to anyone who fled to thy help, implored thy help, sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To thee do we come, before thee we kneel, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, that pro-life may prevail everywhere, and in Minnesota especially. But in thy mercy, hear and answer them. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. All
Amen.
right. Until next week, may God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.